Former First Lady Rosalynn Carter acknowledged the secret to her nearly 80-year-long marriage to President Jimmy Carter was space and respect.
We grew to respect each other. I respect what he could do. He would respect what I could do. And from then on, it's just been a really wonderful partnership.
Eleanor Rosalynn Smith Carter was born in Plains, Georgia on August 18, 1927, and lived in the small peanut farming town during the Great Depression.
I had a really wonderful childhood until I was 13 when my daddy died, and that was sad. But we were poor, but everybody else was poor. We didn't even know we were poor because we had food in the garden and we had a cow in the backyard with milk, and Mother made all my clothes.
She grew up familiar with the son of a local peanut farmer, James Earl Carter Jr., better known as Jimmy.
When he was 16, for instance, a senior in high school, I was 13, his little sister's friend. I never ever dreamed I'd go with him.
But on a visit back to Plains in 1946, while attending the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, Jimmy Carter proposed.
When I asked Rosa to marry me the first time, she said no. That was in February, and it wasn't until May that she changed her mind and decided to get married.
They married in Plains on July 7th, 1946. Mrs. Carter followed her husband during his naval career and gave birth to 3 sons, John Jack Carter, James Earl Carter III, or Chip, and Jeff. Daughter Amy was born later in 1967. The family returned to Plains in 1953 to take over the Carter peanut farming business, which Mrs. Carter managed even after her husband decided to enter politics in 1962.
But he got up one morning, and instead of putting on his khakis to go to work at the farm supply business, he put on his Sunday pants. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to see who's going to run for the state senate."
After contesting the results of that election, Carter won, launching his political career that eventually carried them into Georgia's governor's mansion in 1970 and the White House in 1977. While campaigning to help get her husband elected, Mrs. Carter heard a similar concern from voters.
Every single day that I campaigned, I had somebody ask me what I would do for a mentally ill loved one.
As First Lady of the United States, Carter used her platform to advocate for mental health, forming a presidential commission to address the issue. She traveled the world the rest of her life, working to remove the stigma associated with those suffering from mental illness.
Everybody in our country can realize that it's just an illness like any other illness.
President Carter encouraged his wife's prominent role in his administration and sought her counsel throughout his tenure, including during the Camp David Accords, which ended a state of war between Israel and Egypt.
It was one of the most exciting, I think, thrilling days of my life. And I was standing with Mrs. Begin. Prime Minister Begin got to her before Jimmy got to me. And he came up and he said, "Mama, we're going to go down in history for this."
The hostage crisis in Iran contributed to Carter's presidential election defeat to Republican Ronald Reagan in 1980. And the couple returned to Plains, Georgia in 1981 to plan their post-presidential life, which Jimmy Carter told her he wanted to be different.
I have an idea about what we can do with the rest of our lives. He said we can have a place kind of like Camp David where we can negotiate a peace agreement. So that was the germ of the idea for the Carter Center.
Founded in 1982, the Carter Center today is one of the leading global nonprofit organizations working to wage peace, fight disease, and build hope to underserved populations throughout the world. Under Rosalynn and Jimmy Carter's leadership, the Carter Center has monitored more than 100 elections, treated millions of people suffering neglected tropical diseases, and is on the verge of total eradication of guinea worm. It also gave Rosalynn Carter the means to continue her work in mental health advocacy globally.
That's what I wish for, that people go for help and get help and lead good lives.
Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter are the longest married presidential couple in U.S. history.
And my life's been an adventure.
As her husband entered hospice care toward the end of his life, the Carter family announced the former First Lady was suffering from dementia. She spent her final years alongside Jimmy Carter in the small town of Plains, where they were born and grew up nearly a century before. Kane Farabaugh, VOA News, Plains, Georgia.